my God, perfect
Oh
timing.
no. Did I scare you?
No, I just have can't breathe these days. You know
Can't
how it
breathe.
is.
I hate that for you.
Happy
Happy
Halloween!
Halloween! Okay, welcome back. I'm Liv.
And I'm Amy.
And this
is
is Girls
Gone
Spooky.
Spooky.
Hell yeah. Okay. Well, you know the drill. It's our first major holiday of the year, and it's the spookiest one. And we've got campfire stories.
Yes, and it's our favorite one.
It's our favorite one.
It's the time that we come alive.
Literally, we rise from our coffins to record this podcast for you all.
Exactly. I love it.
Okay, do we jump right in?
Yes.
All right. This is titled, "My Neighbor's Front Door Has Been Wide Open for 2 days."
Oh my God.
Okay. And this is from 11 Velociraptors, who I think we've read from before, and I like their stuff. So here we go.
Okay.
Since it was a sunny Friday afternoon, I didn't think much of it at first. It was 5:30 and I had just returned home from work. When I saw that my neighbor's front door was open, I assumed that she was simply unloading something from her car. I went inside my own house and went through my usual after-work routine, going for a run and then making dinner for my wife Alice and myself. It was only in the evening that I began to suspect something was wrong. I was taking our dog Bailey out for her final walk of the day. It was nautical twilight, my favorite time to be outdoors. I've always enjoyed strolling around the block with Bailey in those last precious moments where there's still enough light to see the horizon. I put Bailey's harness on her as she excitedly hopped around. Then the two of us stepped out into the cool night. After a few seconds, I looked up and noticed that the door to my neighbor's house, the one directly across the street, was still wide open. Also strange was the fact that, despite her car being in the driveway, the house was completely dark, not a single light on inside. I crossed the street. My neighbor is a 20-something named Isabel. She seems like a sweet girl, but we aren't exactly good friends. Sometimes I give her lemons from our tree in exchange for figs from hers, and that's pretty much the extent of our relationship. Still, the sight of that open door made me uneasy. What if she had some kind of medical emergency and was currently unconscious or worse on the floor of her entryway? Anyway, after a few steps up the driveway, the leash in my hand went taut. Looking down, I saw that Bailey had seated herself firmly on the ground, refusing to budge, even as I called her name and tugged on the leash. Her ears were pricked up, her eyes fixed on the house like she was waiting for something. Though she wasn't growling, I was unnerved by her posture and her refusal to walk any closer to the door. I let my voice close the distance between us and my neighbor's threshold instead. "Isabel, it's Brian from across the street. Can you hear me?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, just as I was about to drop Bailey's leash and walk up the steps of the house, there came a voice from the dark. "Hey, Brian," she said, before coughing once and then clearing her throat. "Sorry, I'm in the middle of dinner here. What's up?" I breathed a sigh of relief. "Hey, sorry, I just saw your front door was open. Wanted to make sure you knew." Strangely, there came another long pause. I knew she was inside the house now and close enough to the door to hold a conversation with me, so what's the delay? "Isabel?" "Oh, you're so sweet to check in. Yes, I know it's open. It's just been so hot today and I wanted to let the breeze in. I'll close it soon." "Of course, have a good night." "You too." With that, I tugged Bailey back down the driveway. The two of us completed our walk. I returned home, happy that my neighbor was all right, and went to sleep. Saturday was a much-needed lazy day. I woke up at 10, ate the breakfast Alice made, then spent some time in the backyard with her and Bailey. It was an overcast day, and by 3 p.m. or so, a light rainfall forced us back inside. Alice took a call from her sister, who lives at the edge of our neighborhood, while I went to the living room to throw on some TV. Except before I could get comfortable, I looked out the front window and was surprised to see that Isabel's front door was open again. Open again, I wondered, or was it never shut? I got up close to the window and studied the house across the street. The rain was coming down harder by then, and thick gray clouds overhead made it seem like nighttime. Despite this, there wasn't a single light on inside of Isabel's house. It was so dark inside that the entrance to her house seemed less like a door and more like a black painted rectangle on the exterior wall. I turned to look at Bailey, who was laying on a nearby couch, and saw that she was looking outside of the window as well. Ears pressed against her head, she glanced at me briefly, then refocused her attention outside. I couldn't tell if she was simply people watching or if somehow she too could sense something was wrong. And just then, Alice walked into the living room. She was no longer on the phone, and she greeted me with a strange, sort of nervous smile. That was an odd conversation, she said, taking a seat next to Bailey. Everything all right? I don't know. Clara saw a woman peeking into her house a few nights ago.
Oh.
What? Creepy, right? And she's not the only one. Apparently, there have been a few reports on her side of town, other people experiencing the same exact thing. Nothing stolen, no one hurt, at least that Clara knows of, but it's still weird. Let's make sure we lock up tonight. My thoughts drifted to my neighbor, and I asked my wife what this woman looked like. Like I said, Isabel and I weren't close, but I knew she had recently gone through a difficult breakup with a long term boyfriend. It was far fetched to assume a connection between Isabel and the mystery woman, of course, but who knows? Heartbreak makes people do crazy things. Maybe there was a link between the two. Alice hesitated for a minute. Well, she eventually said, you know Clara. She got a real superstitious way about her. She's always telling stories. What does that mean? It means you've got to take it with a grain of salt. When Alice relayed Clara's description of the woman, I felt a chill run down my spine. Clara said that the woman was tall and gaunt, enough so that she originally mistook her for a man. She said that her skin looked too tight across her face, and her eyes looked unnaturally deep set, as though they were too far back in her skull. Apparently, when she saw that Clara had spotted her, she'd given Clara a big smile before retreating into the night. Apparently, when she smiled, she had too many teeth. I
Oh.
was silent for a moment, unsure what to make of Clara's morbid sighting. Love, was Isabel's front door open this morning? She considered my question as she pet Bailey. I think it was. If nothing else, I figured I should at least tell Isabel to be careful. I put on my raincoat and headed outside, carefully making my way down the wet driveway. Once I made it to the sidewalk, I heard frantic barking coming from behind me. Turning around, I saw Bailey in the window, paws resting on the sill, her growls and whimpers rising over the heavy rain. My wife appeared next to her a few seconds later. She attempted unsuccessfully to comfort Bailey, giving me a questioning look as she did so. I gave her a shrug in return and then crossed the street. Just gonna pause here. Believe your pets, okay? Just
Mm-hmm.
believe your pets.
That's the truth.
Hi. I stopped at the bottom of Isabel's porch steps and listened. Like before, I could hear someone inside, though I couldn't tell exactly what was going on. I heard a deep, wet, ripping sound, like something being torn. Also,
Oh.
like before, I couldn't see a thing inside the house. A voice called out from the dark interior. Brian? Hello again, I said, only wondering in retrospect how she could have known it was me. Sorry to bother you again, but I just wanted to tell you something. Would you mind coming out for a minute? Brian, she repeated, tone almost reprimanding. This isn't a good time. You always seem to catch me in the middle of a meal. It won't take long, I tried persuading. When she didn't respond, I climbed up a few steps. Isabel, there's been some suspicious activity around the neighborhood recently. I know you like to keep the door open for the breeze, but maybe you should keep it shut today. Oh, but I'm so comfortable here on the couch. Why don't you close the door for me? The
Oh.
couch? Wasn't she in the middle of a meal? Even if she were eating on the couch, her voice sounded so close, like she couldn't have been more than a few feet away. Was she hiding behind the door? I climbed up the rest of the steps, trying to recall the inside of her house from the 2 or 3 times I'd been inside. I knew that the room immediately to the left of the entryway was the living room, and most likely where Isabel was supposedly sitting. I also knew that there was a light switch right next to the front door. What the hell, I thought. I'll just go inside for a minute, say hello, shut the door for her. It'll give me some peace of mind to actually see her instead of just hearing her voice. I glanced over my shoulder toward my house. Bailey was still barking her head off, which was unnerving, but the sight of Alice keeping an eye on me gave me some peace of mind. It's just a house, I told myself. Just a normal house with my own neighbor inside it. Taking a deep breath, I stood at the threshold, shocked at how, despite my closeness, the inside of the house remained pitch black. I thrust a hand inside and it disappeared like I dipped it into oil. As I groped around for the light switch, my fingers brushed against something solid, something fleshy. I
Ugh.
jerked my hand back, certain that I'd just touched a person. Isabel? I asked from the darkness, and then from inches away came the sound of laughter. The laugh was deep, gravelly, and mocking, and it did not resemble my neighbor's voice in the slightest. Before I could react, I heard the quick pitter patter of footsteps against wood. It grew quieter and quieter, and I realized that it was the sound of someone running away from me. After a few seconds, I thought I heard a door open and shut in the distance. The back door, maybe? Again, I stuck my arm inside, and this time I was able to find the light switch. I turned on the light and was relieved when the interior of the house revealed itself to me. A normal entryway with a normal coat rack and a normal shoe rack, no creepy intruders in sight. However, the relief was short lived, because when I stepped inside the house, I turned to the left, walked into the living room, and was greeted by the sight of my neighbor, or at least what was left of her. She was splayed out atop a couch, her head lolled off to the side. Her empty eye sockets and toothless, wide-open mouth looked like 3 holes had been dug into her face. Her face itself was red, not as I initially thought because it was covered in blood, but because it was missing its skin. She had been flayed, not only her face, but her arms and the top part of her torso. It looked like someone had been methodically working their way down her body until I had interrupted them.
Oh no.
Paralyzed by fear and confusion, I stood in place. I waited to wake up from a nightmare. I waited for Isabel to walk in from an adjoining room and tell me that I was looking at a Halloween prop. I waited for a dangerously long time, and then I staggered out into the rain. When I returned home, I immediately called the police, though I had trouble putting what I'd seen into words. They arrived quickly, took mine and Alice's statements, and then went across the street to investigate. It's been days now. They haven't told me anything, despite my repeated calls to the station. I can't get answers, can't sleep, can't eat. I just keep replaying the discovery over and over in my mind's eye. That voice, the feeling of brushing against a body in the dark, and of course the sight of that poor girl's mangled corpse. I have too many questions to count, but 3 rise above the rest. Who the hell was I talking to? How did they sound so perfectly like my neighbor? And why is it that every night since I found the body, Bailey hasn't stopped sitting by the front door and growling?
Oh God. You should have listened to the dog.
You should have listened to Bailey. Bailey was trying to tell you something, you idiot.
Come on. Don't be stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That's so scary. Oh my God.
Right? And I was like, okay, is this psycho killer or is this paranormal? And I think paranormal.
Yeah, because of the mimicking thing.
Yeah, the mimicking and like the like deep black inside the house. Like that seems paranormal to me.
Like,
oh,
yes,
creepy.
Supernatural darkness. Yeah.
And the dog too. Like I know dogs can sense like evil in people too, but I don't know.
Yeah. They know all. That is so scary. Oh my God.
Your turn.
Okay. So I have a series that we could start if we like it.
Oh,
we'll
hell
see.
Yeah.
But I chose the 4th one actually in this series because they don't like necessarily build on each other. It's just the same theme. So and I chose this one because they call out Halloween. So
hell yeah.
It's from Nick Botic, Botic, and it's called My Grandpa, a retired homicide detective, wanted me to share another one of his cases to celebrate Halloween.
Oh.
So, here we go.
Is that legal, Grandpa?
No. And apparently he's shared 7 stories. So,
wow, Grandpa.
And they haven't caught Grandpa yet.
Uh-huh.
So, here we go. Apologies for the delay. When I posted the last 3 entries, my grandpa was elated. We spent so much time going over the comments, and it brought him a joy I haven't seen in a long time. His health took a brief turn for the worse in recent weeks, and he made me promise not to post any more transcriptions of our conversations without him being able to sit down with me and watch the comments roll in. I kept that promise. Luckily, he's back to where he was when we started this whole thing, which still isn't great, but it's better than he has been recently. And I'm proud to present the 4th impossible case. And that's what he calls impossible cases, like the ones that he just still can't make sense of. He doesn't know what happened.
Okay, fair.
And also a note, it is written as if it's a transcription of their conversation, so it might sound a little
Oh, okay.
weird me reading it,
Oh, I
but
like that though. That's a
yeah,
cool format.
we'll do our best. So, it's not always people, you know. The impossible ones weren't limited to just people. Back in the late 80s, early 90s maybe, we caught a call a suspected murder had taken place. Mail had filled up the mailbox. Eventually, someone called the police for a wellness check. Some uniforms go to check, look through the window, and they see blood on the living room carpet and ceiling. They go in, clear the house, we get called. I remember the phone call. It was the same as all the calls for the impossible cases. Yeah, Grandpa's name. It's another one. We could always tell how shitty our day was going to be by the tone of voice of whoever called us. It was me and a temporary partner I had, this guy Malloy. He'd come over from across the state, but like every detective, he was familiar with the impossible ones. Though he said at his last shop they were referred to as the unexplained. Different name, but same mind boggling bullshit. Anyway, we pulled up to the house and find everyone standing outside. We get out of the car thinking they're trying to preserve the scene, but then we see that everyone is real on edge, jumping when we shut our doors, staring at the ground, just acting real antsy. We ask them what's going on, but no one will say a word. We go around asking if the house has been cleared, and finally, a uniform, I guess that's what he calls like other people that
Oh,
are coming in and working on the scene,
yeah.
um, looked like his first day on the job, nods his head a little bit. Malloy and I go in the house, and it looks normal, just a normal suburban house. There was a stain on the living room carpet, and it was very clearly blood. It was made all the more obvious by the fact that there was blood dripping from the ceiling.
Oh,
You ever seen a ceiling with flood damage where it looks like dropping a feather on it from the other side is going to make it come crashing down? That's how the spot above the stain was. It was dark red and looked thin as wet tissue. It's a lot of blood.
that's so gross.
Yeah. So obviously, we think there must be a body upstairs. Based on the call we got and how the folks outside were acting, we were expecting something real, something real gruesome. We go upstairs, figure out which room the stain is below, but when we walk in, there's nothing. Room is normal. Not 2 seconds after we open that door, that's when we first hear it. Tap, 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 tap. The best way I can describe it is like they tapped their pinky, then a half second later their ring finger, then middle index thumb. Boom, 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 real fast. Malloy and I both spin around. It sounded like someone was tapping on the wall in the room across the hall from the one we were in. Now, the door to that room is closed. We'd been informed that this woman lived by herself, didn't have any kids, no husband, not even any family that lived in the state, so there shouldn't be anyone else there. Malloy and I draw our weapons, start doing the whole open the door, show us your hands, yada 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 thing, but no one responds. We stand there long enough with our weapons pointed at the wall. I was pointing at the door. Malloy had his trained on the wall. We stand there long enough and don't hear anything back that we start wondering if we just heard something from outside. The uniforms had cleared the house, and they'd never done us wrong before, but with how weird they were acting, we wanted to be sure. Just as I start to take a step to pass Malloy and move toward the other room, we hear it again. Tap, 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 tap. Only this time, it sounded like it was in the room on the other side of the wall from the one we were in, on the same side of the hall, just a door down. I yell out, "Police! Step out into the hallway with your hands up!" This one comes from the opposite wall from the previous one, which would put whoever was doing it, tap, 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 on the steps leading upstairs. Malloy was still standing in the doorway, so he took a step and leaned over to take a look, then looked over to me and shook his head. There wasn't anyone there. The next set of taps, the same pattern. They came from above us, like in the attic, then higher up on the wall by the stairs. then down the hall, then from underneath my
Ew.
feet, like someone was tapping on the ceiling in the living room, then back on the wall in the opposite room, over and over and over and over. Sounded like a miniature stampede was happening all around us. It lasted about 30 seconds, then as quickly as it started, it just stopped. Malloy and I stood there for a good 10 minutes, guns up, arms aching, wondering what the hell was going on. When we both finally calmed down enough to act rationally, we went through and cleared the house again. Attic, top floor, ground floor, basement. We did it ourselves just to make sure it got done thoroughly, and there was no one. House was empty except for us. So then we have to deal with the fact that the ceiling in the living room is leaking blood, but there doesn't seem to be a source. The bedroom where the leak should have been, where the body should have been, there was a throw rug in there, over the hardwood floor. So we moved the rug. There's a little door type thing, I guess you'd call it, a little door in the floor, maybe the size of a pack of cigarettes with a hinge that's flush with the floor. I open it, shine a flashlight in, but there's nothing there. No source for where the blood could be coming from, and even after we had some guys come in and take out the floorboards, I took out the insulation and it was dry. The material that made up the ceiling, while it was soaked with blood on the bottom of it, was completely dry on top, which, is impossible. It's like the source of the blood was in between a half-inch thick piece of plaster. That was a hell of a long day, I'll tell you. So, it's late now, probably 2:30 in the morning. Malloy and I are still at the house looking around. We finally got a few people to come in, fingerprint folks, photographers, they're getting their jobs done. Me and Malloy are standing in the kitchen when he goes, "Did you hear that?" I hadn't heard a thing. He goes, "There it is again." I'm straining my ears trying to hear what he's hearing, and when I turn to look at him and ask what he thinks he's hearing, I won't lie to you, my heart skipped a beat. Malloy was standing there, staring straight ahead into my eyes, but it was like he was looking through me. His face had gone completely limp, slack, and his eyes looked like they'd been turned off, like there was no life behind them. His mouth hung open like he was just totally brain dead. "Malloy," I say. He just stared through me to the point that I looked over my shoulder to make sure no one was behind me. When I turned back around, Malloy was pointing to the basement door. I looked over and saw that it was closed. When I looked back again, Malloy was pointing, but the life had returned to his face. He looked normal. I asked Malloy what the hell had happened, and he just said, "You didn't hear that?" I told him I hadn't. He said we needed to check the basement again. We head over, open the door, only now the lights wouldn't turn on. They'd worked fine the entire day, but all of a sudden now nothing. We get our flashlights out and head down. I asked him why we're checking the basement again, but he just kept saying, "We need to check the basement again. You didn't hear that?" We get down there, and everything looks the same as it had all day. Tap, 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 tap. The taps sounded like they were against one of the metal racks that lined the basement walls. We shine our lights all around. There's nothing, no one. Tap, 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 tap. This time, it sounds like it's on a cardboard box. "You didn't hear that?" Malloy says again. The tapping starts all around us. It's on metal, cardboard, plastic, wood, drywall, plaster. It gets to the point that it's deafening. I shine my light all around, and it eventually lands on Malloy, who had at some point moved to the corner. He had that same dead look on his face again, and he was pointing towards the ceiling just behind me. I consider myself something of a brave man, but in that moment, I was about as scared as I could have been. I did not want to look behind me. It felt like something was there, looking at me, waiting for me to turn around. "You didn't hear that?" Malloy said again. "You didn't
Stop
hear that?
saying that,
You
Malloy!
didn't hear that? You didn't hear that? You didn't hear that?" He
Oh my
just kept
god!
repeating it over and over. Which is so scary thinking about that.
So scary. You're in this basement with the guy.
And he's just saying it over and over. Ugh. Then he started slurring his words like he'd sound if he was drunk. I'm yelling out at him to shut his mouth, scared out of my mind. And so there's already been a lot of this that makes you scratch your head, say, what the hell? But then I worked up enough courage to turn around. The Malloy was still repeating that over and over, but I turned around and looked up towards where he was pointing, and there was a spot of the plaster in the basement ceiling that was newer than the rest of it, the same size as that little door in the floor on the second level. We'd been through the house more times than I can remember, and neither of us had noticed that door until now, which seemed unlikely. The tapping seems to be getting louder, faster. I got Malloy yelling over and over, and I'm so afraid I think I might piss myself. It gets so loud that I cover my ears, start hunching over. I mean, it sounded like you could have heard it on the other side of the neighborhood. Then it all stopped again. I looked over to Malloy and saw him sobbing into his hands. Then he walked up the basement stairs without saying a word. I wanted to get the hell out of there, but at the same time, I didn't want to skimp on my duties. I yelled up the stairs for a few of the construction guys to come down and take the entire piece of plaster that the spot was on. They unscrewed the screws, and when one side of the piece was lower than the others, a little bag slides out and falls to the ground.
Oh, God.
The bag had fingers in it. 3 fingers. If I remember right, they were an index, ring, and pinky finger.
Tap, tap,
Maybe.
tap. Tap, 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 tap.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We eventually went back upstairs, and when we did, there were spots like the one in the basement all over the place. The ceiling in the living room had stopped bleeding, but now we had more of these spots. Must have been 5 or 6 on each level of the house. Inside each were bags of fingers, from pinky to thumb. We had them all tested, and as far as we could tell, at least some of them belonged to previous owners of the house going back decades. Turns out that everyone who'd lived in the house had died. One of them was a suicide, but the rest were natural causes. I should have given a little trigger warning for that, and there's another mention of suicide as well coming up.
I mean, I feel like at this point,
yeah,
holy shit.
It was odd because all the fingers were in perfect condition, like they'd just been removed from the body and decomp hadn't started yet. Doesn't make any goddamn sense. Yeah. Malloy, that poor bastard. He quit the job the following day, refused to talk about what was going on in his head. He tried committing suicide twice that I know of. Now he lives with his daughter in Monterey, California. In the few years after that day, I tried to check in on him from time to time, and he would apparently have these fits where he just screams, "You didn't hear that?" over and over.
No.
Poor Malloy. I feel bad. I was supposed to go back to that house a few days later. I showed up, and when I got to the front door, I just couldn't do it. That fear set in again, made me feel like I was going to pass out. I knew right from the jump this one didn't have an answer. I still did my due diligence, did what I could to find some answers, but I refused to go back in that house. Oh, and the one who lived there, a neighbor down the street had seen her walking the morning we got the call. So several days after she'd stopped getting her mail for whatever reason, even though she was apparently home. She'd walked down the street and onto the main road. We tracked her security tapes. But she turned the corner from North Avenue on 92nd Street and just vanished. Poof, into thin air. Wondered for a long time what happened to her. Then one day, almost 7 years later, we got a tape in the mail. It had been sent to the precinct, addressed to both me and Malloy. It was a security tape from a gas station. The timestamp was the day after we'd been to her house, so the day after she'd vanished. About 2 hours after. That's a little confusing. But across the street from the gas station, some folks were doing some tree work. That woman had walked up to the area these folks were doing the work, set her purse down with her ID on top of it, leaned forward, and went
Oh God.
headfirst into a wood chipper.
Oh! Oh! Holy shit!
Yeah, this took a turn at the end that I wasn't anticipating.
No.
Messed up, right? Yes. Well, even more messed up than that, the tape came from a gas station in Florida, about 1,200 miles away. Never did we figure out how she got from the corner of 92nd and North to Tampa Bay, Florida in under 2 hours.
Oh my God.
And then it ends with a couple days later, I went back to my grandpa's and he got me immediately excited for his next case. You know, I should probably tell you about the very first impossible case I ever had. Dun dun dun.
Oh my God. Ooh, I like
Yeah.
that. I feel like we should do
Mhm.
that series. That's
Yeah.
fun.
And there's 7 of them, so a lot to look forward
Oh.
to.
Okay, I'm sending you one and then to end us on. So
Oh, okay.
we have time, I think. Okay.
Perfect.
I'm not going to actually read the title because I think it spoils too much.
Okay.
But this is from Sunhead Prime. Halloween is my favorite time of year. More than anything, I love decorating my front yard. It started when I was a kid. My parents always had elaborate decorations, and I kept the trend going with my own family. It bonded us, and I loved doing it. On top of that, my neighborhood has a bit of a reputation for going all out at Halloween time. It was a perfect fit. Each year, there was an informal competition between the houses on my street. When we first moved into the neighborhood, we kind of set the standard for decorations. My graveyard scenes were always elaborate, but when we moved into this house, I went above and beyond. I added touches of flair, lights, smoke, some small animatronics, really made a life size diorama out of it. I easily won the challenge the first 5 years. But after that fifth year, everyone else on our street upped their games. And before too long, our street was the most trick or treated street in the town. Honestly, it was a sight to behold. So many people coming together to scare the living hell out of each other. It was sweet, in a horror movie kind of way. It was around this time that the Johnsons moved in down the street. Tim and Joyce and their little boy Joey. They are the nicest people, and his wife makes an amazing lemon bar. And we're great friends. 11 months out of the year. But around Halloween time, the Johnsons become my sworn enemies. Tim and Joyce work for a theme park. I'll let you guess which one. And they go all out for the holidays. The first year, they had their own graveyard scene that was, to be honest, nothing short of amazing. It far outdid my unearthed graves. It was clear they won the contest. I took it in stride, but the next day I started planning what I could do for the following year. It's petty, I know, but I wanted to win. I lost 5 years now running. Last week at a barbecue, Tim let it slip that they were working on a lab scene. I had tried that the last few years, but the results were kind of mixed. I decided that I wanted to go back to a graveyard scene, but in my spare time, I've been looking at how-to videos about creating more lifelike decorations, how to build cheap but effective animatronics, scouring Craigslist for supplies, looking at various Pinterest boards. I know, I wanted to punch myself too in order to have the best looking yard. I felt that with all of the decorations I already had, the ones I had found on Craigslist, and my new knowledge, I was ready to win again. The Johnsons be damned, this was my year. The week before I was going to break out the decorations and get started, we had one of the most intense thunderstorms we've ever had in these parts. It felt like at any minute I'd look out the window and see the Wicked Witch flying by on a broom. We made plans just in case a tornado touched down, but nothing but hard rain fell. When the storm finally ceased, I went into my garage to prepare my decorations and was gutted. The roof in the garage had a leak right above where I stored my supplies. Everything was ruined, and my hopes of winning back my crown were dashed in a heartbeat. For a minute, I thought that maybe this was for the best. I had spent a lot of spare time planning for this and had a honey-do list that was growing by leaps and bounds. Maybe I was too into the competition. This was probably healthy. I was planning on telling my family that we'd just do a simple display this year, but then my kids spent the night at their friend's house and my wife worked late. I was home alone, had the entire internet to help solve my problem. I decided as a very last ditch effort to see what cheap supplies I could find online. If there was nothing, I'd throw in the towel. And that's when I saw an ad on Craigslist that caught my attention. I can't keep these things anymore. Halloween. It was weird enough to warrant a click, and I'm glad I did. Inside, someone was getting rid of years worth of Halloween decorations. I called right away and told them I'd be there in 10 minutes to pick it up. The house was a little bit off the beaten path, but nothing crazy. The owner, on the other hand, tiptoed into Nutsoville. She said her name was Shade, which, whatever, it's Craigslist, and that she was going to be moving soon. There weren't any moving boxes, and I didn't know if she was being honest, but I didn't really care. She told me that she'd held on to these things for as long as she could, but she had to get rid of them now. There were several trunks. I had hit the mother load. I pulled out my wallet, but she stopped me. She said I could have them for free. I asked to see what was inside, but she didn't really want me opening them there. She said they were really tightly packed and it might cause a mess. I wanted to make sure I wasn't just inheriting someone's junk, so I insisted. She sighed and ducked back into the house. And when she returned, I noticed she had put on a handmade necklace. I asked about it, but she either didn't hear me or ignored me. It was probably some Etsy thing, so I just let it slide and cracked open the first trunk. There were bones. Not a complete skeleton, but odds and ends. Some cloaks, cauldrons, headstones. It was incredible, and it was high quality stuff too. I asked again if she wanted anything for them, and she said nope. I shrugged, loaded them into my truck, and thanked her for the supplies. She muttered something under her breath and then slammed the front door. And I kind of wanted to get as far away from Shade as possible, so I bolted home. When I got there, I dragged everything into the garage and unloaded. It was better than I could have ever hoped for. There were at least 5 full skeletons, 2 witches' hats, a few brooms, lanterns, vials with red and blue and green water in them, and so much more. I sketched out the design I wanted for the yard and was pleased with myself. I might not have the animatronics I had wanted, but these looked so good, I honestly might not need it. I had started setting up in the yard when my wife got home with the kids. They were jazzed by the props, but my wife was kind of confused. I told her that all of my supplies got ruined in the storm and that I had gotten all of these things for free online. I told her it was kismet. She seemed dubious. I swore that I hadn't spent a dime. And as an added bonus, we got 5 new steamer trunks for free. They could be antiques and we could sell them. Put off by the whole thing. They looked too real. It kind of made her feel sick to her stomach. Something about all of this was off to her. I assured her it was nothing. I thought if I showed her the trunks, she might come around, but she didn't. She was looking them over and agreed that they were old, but they kind of made her feel. Along the side of the trunks, she noticed something carved into the wood. It was a cross inside a circle inside a triangle. I told her it was probably just some old identification thing. Maybe it was some code from the 1930s. These trunks were that old, but she didn't want to hear it. She told me that I could keep these for a year and then I'd have to get rid of them. It was too much. Everyone would think we'd robbed a crypt or something. I must have spent all day working on my scene. 2 skeleton witches raising the bodies of a few fallen comrades crawling out of the grave while 2 minions held lanterns. Because next thing I knew, the sun was gone and my porch light kicked on. I sat back and admired the scene. It was good, and it looked real. I grabbed a lighter and lit up all the lanterns. The orange gave the whole scene an eerie glow. The final touch, I placed those witch hats on the skeletons.
Bless
Sorry.
you. Bless you.
Okay. The final touch, I placed those witch hats on the skeletons. It looked unsettling. I loved it.
Yeah.
Before I was done, Tim came jogging by. He stopped and let out a whistle. He was impressed. He asked if he could get a closer look at the skeletons, and I let him. He messed around with the bones and looked the skeletons up and down. He shook his head. These are amazing. Thanks, I said, beaming. Picked him up this morning. From where? Ah, I said. A magician doesn't reveal his secrets. Looks like I have to pull out all the stops, he said, nodding goodbye and continuing his jog. As he ran away, I muttered half jokingly, So long, nemesis. Inside, a few beers, some TV, and a deep, satisfied sleep. It was about 3 in the morning when my daughter started screaming from across the house. I dashed up and found her outside her bedroom door in tears. I asked what was wrong, and all she could say was that someone was looking in her window. I grabbed a bat and went out the front door. There wasn't anyone there, but someone was looking into her window, one of the skeleton witches. I walked over to the decorations and looked down at the ground. There were footprints around the window, and it looked like the skeleton had been dragged from where they had been. I figured neighborhood kids were pulling a prank. Wouldn't be the first time they'd messed around, and dragged the skeleton back to its spot. The next day, when I went out for work, I noticed that one of the skeletons that was on the ground seemed to have been moved around as well. His bones were a bit more scattered than before. Again, there were footprints, but not much else. I thought about getting security cameras, but then I remembered how much they cost. This was just a temporary problem. In less than a month, this would all be put away. That night, around midnight, I was sitting in my living room, half paying attention to whatever Netflix show I was watching and bullshitting around online. That's when I heard something outside moving around. I glanced up and nearly had a heart attack. Someone had put the witch skeleton in the living room window. After I collected myself, I listened and heard hushed whispering outside in the front yard. Those goddamn kids were still there. I decided to repay the favor and scare the hell out of them. I went around the back door and snuck outside. It was colder than I thought. I could see my breath. I hadn't been cold inside. I tiptoed to the gate and quietly opened it. I walked softly along the side of my house, waiting to jump out and scare the kids. Right as I got to the edge of the house, I heard more hushed whispering. They were still there. I psyched myself up and then jumped out from my hiding spot, screaming like a madman. One of the skeleton witches fell to the ground, and I heard what sounded like footsteps on pavement run in the opposite direction. Down the street, I saw figures running away, or so it seemed. I was pissed I didn't get a good view and that they had come back a second time. I decided to call the cops. Naturally, when the cops showed up, they looked bored with my story. They said absence of any kind of evidence, can't do anything. They could increase patrols through the neighborhood, but that was about it. They looked at the footprints, agreed that someone had been there, but they just hopped back into their squad car and rolled away. The next night, we managed to make it through without any incident. I started to think that maybe my impromptu scaring act had worked, but the following night, I heard voices again from outside my window. They had come back, and instead of scaring, I called 911 and waited for the red and blue lights to come cruising by. When they finally did, 3 hours later, the kids had left. It was the same cops as the night before, and they looked less than amused. They again assured me that they would roll more cars nearby, but they honestly didn't expect to catch anyone. They suggested I consider moving the figure in at night, or maybe getting a motion detector for the front porch light before they left. At this point, my wife just wanted me to take the decorations down. They were already unsettling her, the kids weren't thrilled with them, and these idiots in the neighborhood kept messing with them. I heard her, but I also was pretty adamant that these were isolated incidents and they'd die down when the rest of the neighborhood's decorations went up. She told me fine, but I could tell she wasn't happy. I promised that if something else happened, I would take them down. She said not only would I have to take them down, but I would get rid of them. I agreed. For the next few days, things were fine. I felt like I had vanquished the teens with the increased police presence. The decorations didn't move again. My kids warmed up to them, especially when I added some lights around them to lighten up the mood a bit. Even my wife had to admit that things were better. About a week later, I went out in the morning for work and noticed that the strand of lights I had decorated the skeletons with had been removed, but it wasn't gone exactly. Someone had tied them into a noose. I didn't tell anyone, I just grabbed it and tossed it into my car. That night, I decided to stay up late to make sure that no one was fucking with me. But I'm not gonna lie, for a minute, I thought it might be Tim. Maybe he was really intimidated by my design, but I pushed that away as being crazy. Our rivalry was fun, not something serious, and Tim was nice. He's been to my house. His wife had amazing lemon bars. I'm just being paranoid. Around 1 in the morning, I heard footsteps coming down the sidewalk in front of my house. It sounded like someone was running, and the dull thwack rang in the air. I thought it might be kids returning to fuck with my things again, so I moved to the living room window and peered out into the darkness. It took a minute for my eyes to adjust to the dark, but when they did, I noticed that one of the witch skeletons was missing. Those fucking kids were at it again. I needed evidence this time, so I knew I was going to have to record them in the act, show the local cops I wasn't crazy. I walked out my back door as quiet as I could, pulled out my cell phone. Like the other night, I wanted to sneak up on them. Unlike the other night, I did not want to scream at them. So I got to my gate and slowly opened it. I nearly passed out. The witch skeleton was standing there. I fell back and dropped my phone on the concrete. I let out a little yell, but stifled it with my hands. For some reason, I expected the skeleton to move, but it just stood there, the empty eye sockets staring forward. I stood up, dusted myself off, and slid past the skeleton. I hit record on my camera and prayed my scared yelp hadn't scared away the teens. When I got to the end of my house, I edged my phone around the corner and looked at the screen. I was expecting to see a few teens laughing, moving shit around. The camera lens struggled to focus, and when it finally did, I didn't see anyone. There was no laughing. There wasn't anything at all. All of the decorations were gone. I
Whoa.
walked out from behind the house confused. I stumbled over to the lawn and saw footprints all over, but nothing else. Where the hell had everything gone? Just then, I heard footsteps running away from where I had just come from. I ran around the house and stopped, stunned. The skeleton that was standing near my gate was gone too. I felt a chill go down my spine. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't neighborhood kids fucking with me. I heard what sounded like a cackle coming from my front lawn, and then I saw orange in the reflection of my car's windshield. I walked back to the front yard and saw that my lawn was on fire.
Oh.
Only it wasn't just a random blaze, it was a design. It was a cross inside a circle, inside a triangle, just like on the trunks. I
Whoa.
grabbed my hose and was going to spray the fire, but as quickly as I turned it on, the fire went out. I heard a faint cackle again. This time it sounded like it was on my roof. I didn't want to see if anything was there. I ran back into the house and locked all the doors. I stayed up for hours. The following day, I was a wreck, but didn't want to scare my family. I told my wife that she was right, those decorations were weird, and I decided to take them down last night. She was happy at first, but then she looked out the front window and frowned. Real funny, she said, flipping me off. I went to the window and opened it wide. They were all back in the exact same places that they had been,
Mm.
except the two witches' skeleton skulls had been turned. One faced my front window, and the other was looking off down the street. I felt a chill run down my body. All day at work, I couldn't shake what had happened. I Googled the cross inside a circle inside a triangle picture, but I couldn't find much at first. 20 or so pages into the search, though, I found something that made my heart race. The webpage said the drawing was related to witchcraft. Specifically, it was a symbol often carved into the coffins of witches that had burned at the stake. But these symbols were old, like 1600s old. It was thought that the symbol kept the witches' remains from acting up again, if you will.
Oh.
If the coffins had been opened, the witches would be free to cause havoc. As long as they were sealed and marked, things were fine. But if they were released, my mouth went dry. I felt my eye twitching, my stomach churning. I left work early, barely able to give my boss a reason for splitting at noon. I rushed home to my empty house. I wanted these things gone before my family got home. I grabbed the trunks and dragged them to the front yard. I started disassembling the bones and throwing everything inside those trunks. I know it sounds crazy, but I could feel them staring at me as I tossed them back into the trunks. As soon as I finished packing up the last box into my truck, I saw Tim walking towards me. He had stayed home from work and asked me what was going on. Oh, the kids don't like these. Too scary. Decided to take them down. They were pretty realistic. Plus, kids in the neighborhood were messing with them every other night, moving them around and shit. I just don't want to deal with it anymore. Tim started laughing. That makes sense now. I thought I saw one of those things walking down the street the other night. What? I came down for a glass of water and it looked like one of them was walking down the street. I was spooked to hell at first, but realized that that's crazy, so it was probably just one of those kids moving them around. I forced a smile, but I wanted to die. Yeah, total assholes. I found them all over. I think I'm going to wait until closer to Halloween to put my stuff out. I don't want you to look out and see a mad scientist strolling down the street at midnight. Hey, he said, if you don't want these, can I take them off your hands? I really admire the craftsmanship. I wanted to win the decorating contest, but not that bad. I feigned a frown. I wish you'd asked me earlier. Buddy at work is taking them. Damn. Well, at least they're going to a good home. Yep. I slammed the gate to my truck and said goodbye. I drove back to Shade's house, and not surprisingly, she had moved out. The place looked as sinister as it had before. Worse now, because it was now abandoned. Fuck it. She is getting these things back. I backed my truck into her driveway and went to go get rid of the trunks. When I opened the gate, I felt a pain in my stomach and my head started pounding. Normally, I would have been laid out by the pain, but I fought through it and quickly unloaded the trunks into Shade's empty driveway. I didn't care how they landed, only that they weren't near me, though I heard one of them crack when it hit the ground, but I didn't stick around to find out. I hopped back into my truck and took off. As I drove away, I glanced in the rear view and I swear I saw one of the skeleton witches standing in the driveway. Maybe I was seeing things, but I didn't care. They were gone and out of my life. Things were fine the rest of the month. Halloween came and went. The Johnsons won the decorating contest again, and my family had an amazing time trick or treating. My wife was very pleased the skeletons were gone, and I just tried to forget that they were ever there. Things totally went back to normal. What's odd, though, is every so often when I'm up late and the wind starts to blow, I swear to God, I think I hear cackling.
It's the Sanderson sisters.
The Sanderson sisters! Isn't that creepy?
Yeah, I like that one. That I
Mm-hmm.
knew as soon as that shade put on a necklace or whatever, some
Mm-hmm.
talisman against whatever
But
was.
also, like, those were human remains.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, of witches.
Of witches.
Scary.
Very scary.
Okay, one more?
One more.
Okay, one more.
No, one more.
Oh, one more.
One more.
Okay, let me pick up my microphone so we can
Yes.
hear.
Yes.
So, this is from Helvira, which is cute.
It's very cute.
And it's Halloween 1992. Those were the days. I wasn't alive,
Those were the days.
it really, if it was anything
almost.
Yeah.
We were a twinkle in our parents' eyes.
Aw, cute.
Cute.
Okay. When I was 12 years old, I was gearing up for an awesome Halloween out with my friends. At that time, it was still relatively safe for kids to go combing neighborhoods in search of candy and treats without a lot of parental supervision. Times have certainly changed now, but after this incident, I'm not sure I'd ever want my kids out alone at night, especially on Halloween. Cider Mill Road was long and scattered with a lot of houses. It was an area that was kind of known to be spooky, mainly because there was an old house at the end, which had lots of swirling ghost stories. I had heard many childhood whispers and legends. It was an apple orchard years ago, and the slaves had been brutally murdered. The original owner had hung himself at the top of the staircase. There were so many stories, but all the town kids were enamored by the house. We would ride bikes by the house in hopes of catching a glimpse into its history. We were all certain it was filled with all sorts of paranormal delights. After trick-or-treating for several hours and almost reaching the end of Cider Mill Road, a friend suggested we go knock on the door of the house and see if anyone answered. We knew an old woman lived there by the last name of Murphy. No one ever saw her out much, but she had inherited the property and had lived there for probably 50 years. It was a big house, especially for one person. I always thought it had to be lonely to be unmarried, no children, and living in such a big, old, run-down house. My dad called it decayed gentry, although I had no idea what that meant. The driveway winded up through the orchard, which lay sprawling in front of the house. No one tended to the apples anymore, and so most of them lay rotting on the ground, which by October was more of a rotting stench than an apple fragrance. "Hey, you go up and ring the bell," Jessica told me. I shrugged. "I'm not going by myself." "Take Olivia with you," she said. "Olivia, come with me."
No!
Olivia shook her head. "I don't think so. It's getting late. I need to get home." Jessica grabbed our hands. "We'll all go together." "It smells bad," Olivia said. "I don't want to go up there." I agreed. "Yeah, the apples stink. If an old woman lives here, she might already be in bed. She probably doesn't want trick-or-treaters." "She doesn't even have a front porch light on," Olivia said. "Universal sign for leave me alone." "You guys are such chickens. Come on, it's Halloween. Let's just do this, and then when we go to school on Monday and tell everyone what happened, we'll be the coolest kids in class." Much to my dismay, we were being led further up the dark gravel driveway to the dilapidated mansion at the top of the hill. Olivia had some neon glow stick bracelets, which was the only light we were able to see with because it was pitch black and we didn't have flashlights. It had been a fairly cloudy night, although it was almost a full moon. We had only had glimpses of moonlight the entire night. None of us thought ahead to bring any light sources. When we reached the top of the hill where the house was positioned, I got a cold chill. I was shaking. I don't know if it was the temperature outside or the fact that I was frightened, but my teeth were chattering. The three of us approached the house and climbed up onto the porch. Jessica pushed me forward. "Ring the doorbell," she was whispering. "I don't want to ring the bell," I said. She pushed me again. "Just do it." I stepped forward. My
Just
eyes.
do
Just
it.
do it.
So Dwight.
That's how I picture Jessica. I stepped forward. My eyes had begun to adjust to the darkness, and I could see the door in front of me with elaborate stained glass. Although my hand was shaking, I reached for the bell, and I pressed it. Immediately, Jessica and Olivia started giggling and screaming. They take off running, leaving me standing on the porch. How dare you?
Literally. How dare I?
Yeah. I heard a noise from inside the house. I darted off the porch. I tripped over my witch's dress and fell face first on the grass. My pumpkin-shaped bucket filled with candy spilled onto the ground, but I was too scared to bother with it. I threw the bucket down, trying to see my way to the drive, but it was dark. I could hear the girls giggling in the distance somewhere ahead of me. "Those bitches," I mumbled under my breath. My feet hit the gravel on the road. My heart was pounding. Why was I so scared? I was on the road now and away from the house. I was in a safe place. The old woman was probably in bed. She hadn't even opened the front door. I told myself not to be afraid. I was fine now. We were just being dumb kids. I had slowed from a sprint. I was breathing heavily but slowed down to a walk. I could make out headlights down Cider Mill, so I knew I was not far from the road. Those girls would be waiting down there at the end for me. I'd give them a piece of my mind. "Shit," I said in a low voice. "Stupid girls." When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, two hands were grabbing at my chest from behind. Something was pulling me. I let out a scream. Something had me. I could hear it snarling and hissing as it pulled me. I tried fighting it off. It was dragging me over to the side of the driveway. I could see the outline of an apple tree in the moonlight. I could smell that rotting stench. I was only 12, but I was fighting as hard as I could. I was screaming and yelling, "Help me!" I tried hitting the arms off me. I was as combative as I possibly could be, feeling like I was fighting for my life. Whoever had me was not letting go. I felt sharp nails digging into my chest while it was pulling me toward the apple trees. "Who are you? Let me go!" The clouds must have moved away from the moon because for a moment again the moonlight was shining down, illuminating the orchard around me. That's when I caught a glimpse. What had its arms around me was an old hag. Hag face.
Hi, babe.
A woman, but she was old and looked half dead. She had flesh that looked like it was also rotting away from her face. She was still gurgling and snarling. I managed to twist myself loose, and the second I did, I felt her sharp nails on my back, but I took off running. I ran through the orchard, dodging trees. I felt the disintegrating apples squishing and oozing under my feet. At one point, I slipped and fell into a pile of the mush. I finally made my way to the gravel and did not stop until I was at the main road. Of course, my asshole friends were posted up waiting for me, but the minute they saw me bolting by, they did not laugh. I was in shock. Somehow we managed to get to a neighbor's house where the person called my parents to come pick me up. My friends explained what had happened and how they'd left me at the house. I had scratch marks on both my chest and back from the incident. My parents decided we needed to call the police to make a report. The cops thought it was probably just a Halloween prank, probably some teenagers trying to scare me. We ended up getting a huge lecture from the cop and from our parents. The next day was a Sunday. I was still really terrified about what had happened and was adamant it was not just some teenage kids messing with us. I kept telling my parents over and over that it was something else. My mom finally told me it was enough and over with, and we didn't need to rehash it again. By early evening, I had settled into being a bit calmer about the whole thing when the phone rang. My dad answered, and after a few minutes of, "Yes, I see, and I understand," he came into the den where I was piled up watching television. My mom was sitting in her chair reading a book. She looked up at my dad, who was kind of pale. "What is it, George?" she asked. He looked at us both with astonishment and said, "That was Deputy Richardson from last night. He went over to do a welfare check on Mrs. Murphy after they couldn't reach her last night for questioning. It turns out Mrs. Murphy was dead inside her house the whole time. Apparently, the coroner says he estimates roughly that she probably died back in August. He says they still have no signs of anyone else being at the house last night. The house had not been broken into or anything. The only thing they found outside was your bucket of candy, which was all over the ground just like you said." "Honey, didn't you say it was an old woman who grabbed you?" Mom asked, horrified. And that's it.
Witches and hags, baby.
Mhm.
Happy Halloween, mofos.
Yes. And the first two comments are so funny. The one, "Jessica is such a manipulative bitch."
I love it.
And
I love
OP,
it.
"Your friends are assholes!" Exclamation point.
So funny.
People have strong feelings about Jessica and Olivia.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, fair. Jessica,
Yeah,
not it.
no.
Not it.
Olivia was just using self preservation.
Yeah, I
She was being
guess.
smart.
It's just, yeah, she was being manipulated also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, y'all. Careful with those Halloween decorations. And
Yeah,
also, like,
fingers in bags,
yeah, fingers in bags. Oh,
rotten apples.
like unclear sourced blood stains.
Yeah,
Um,
tapping.
tap.
We
Yeah.
already know that one.
It's someone, next time someone's like, "Did you hear that?" I'm going to be like,
No. No. Oh god.
well, shit, guys. Happy freaking Halloween, you spooky
Yay!
little babies.
Happy
Um,
Halloween.
happy Halloween. We'll be back next week. And until then,
Stay
stay spooky.
spooky. Bye.
Bye.